Number 5 from your algebra exam. This says that this function f of x, which is this big square root function, it says to find the real values of x for which f is real and finite. So this is basically saying find the domain, and then it says find the range of f. Okay, so for the domain, well, we know from many years of experience that we can't take the square root of a negative. So let's find these values for which these pieces are only positive. The values for x for which this is only positive, this is positive. So why don't we add 2 to both sides? So this is 2, and then we'll multiply by x squared on both sides. So we get 1 is less than 2x squared, and then we can divide by 2, so we get 1 over 2 is less than or is greater than x squared. Okay, so this is a quadratic again. I want to know when x squared is less than a half. So that's basically saying here's x squared, here's a half. I want to know when it's less than, so there's these two values that it's between when it's less than. So we need to find those out. So x 1/2 equals x squared, and take the square root, we get this value is negative 1 over root 2, and this one is positive 1 over root 2. So it's greater than 0 when we're between these two values, negative 1 over root 2, whoops, that didn't work, 1 over 2 to root 1 over 2. But we can't put in 0 here because then we divide by 0. So we actually have to say when x not equal to 0. So something like that. Part B says find the range. So the range of f, well, this is actually quite a bit more difficult. Find the range. So we know when we put in we know when we put in these values, we get 0. And we know that the domain is between these two values, except not equal to 0. So the range is, well, when we plug this in, we get 0. So we definitely know it's from 0. That's the smallest it's going to be. So 0. And then, so if I plug in like a half, or I plug in something very small, maybe like a 1/10 or a 100th. If I plug in a 100th, I get 1 over, well, let's plug in a 1/10. We'll get 1 over 100 minus 2. So that's, sorry, that's 1 over 100, yeah, 1 over 100 minus 2. Almost made a mistake. 1 over 100, plugging in a 1/10. So that would be 1 over 100, which is 100 minus 2, which is positive and pretty big. So if I plug in 1 over 100 or 1 over 1,000 or 1 over 1,000,000, this piece will get huge, and then I'll just subtract 2 and it will still be positive. So I believe it's unbounded all the way to infinity. And that's number 5, probably one of the more difficult ones from the exam. Number 6, find the function. This rational function right here, find its inverse and clearly state its domain. So if y equals 2x plus 1 over x minus 1, then the inverse, you switch x and y, so 2y plus 1 over y minus 1. We have y minus 1 times x equals 2y plus 1. Distribute the x, we get xy minus x equals 2y plus 1. Add the x and subtract the 2y, we get xy minus 2y equals x plus 1. Factor out a y, we get x minus 2. I think you know where we're going now. And then y equals x plus 1 over x minus 2. Okay, so there's our inverse. Now we need to state the domain. So the domain basically is I can plug in anything I want, anything, 1, 2, 7, 5, except I can't plug in a number that I get 0 on the bottom. So 0 in the denominator would put a vertical asymptote. So if I plug in 2, I get 0 in the denominator, which means there's a vertical asymptote. So the domain is all real numbers x not equal to 2.